After catching his wife cheating with a camera, the husband took unexpected revenge on her. Infidelity partner. I stayed up past my normal bedtime of 10 p.m. watching videos on YouTube. There was a playlist in the sidebar, and I watched videos of one of my favorite basketball players, Larry Big Johnson. He had a ponytail and long blonde hair and really looked like a movie star. I knew him from college, when he was the star player on the team and lived in the same building as me. We saw each other a lot, especially during the off-season after he turned pro. He joined the Wizards, the team closest to my home in Virginia. He retired from the NBA 3 years ago and now works as a game commentator for WeTV. I'm watching some of his old videos and reminiscing about the past. The next video is not about basketball, but a news clip showing Big L dancing intimately with a blonde beauty in a club in Miami. It is so suggestive that I am shocked to see that the blonde woman is my wife Lee. The video has just been released, and the headline reads, "Another Conquest." I watched the entire 3-minute video, which ends with Big L and Lee kissing. I immediately downloaded the video and called Lee, but she didn't pick up. The timestamp on the video showed that it had just been recorded an hour ago and recently posted online. Lee was supposed to be in Miami for a 4-day conference that included my friend Bart Kovacs. I called Bart, and he answered, "Hey, Bart, it's Lee Martin." I addressed him by his nickname, Marty, and paused for a moment before Bart answered, "Marty, how's it going?" "Not so good." "Bart, do you know where Lee is right now?" I asked anxiously. "Oh my God, Bart, she's with Big Lee," I continued. "I need to know the whole story, because someone has already uploaded a video to YouTube, and my kids will see it tomorrow. I need to know if she is with him and how long they have been together. They were supposed to be in Miami for 3 days and come home tomorrow at noon. They met on Tuesday when we arrived and were checking in. They probably met at college. She attends meetings during the day but doesn't eat with us. Her roommate said she's not even there at night. I guess she must be with that man. We all think so. I'm really sorry, Maddie." "Me too. Will you in the morning?" "She's catching a flight, probably. She'll probably attend the morning meeting, but won't have breakfast. Maybe she's still at the hotel and just changed rooms." "Okay, tell her not to come home if she plans to. He's staying here too, and I don't want to confront her. If she asks, I'll say, that's fair. Goodbye." I met Lee in college. We were both 20 years old, in our junior year, taking an advanced math class. When I walked into the classroom that first day, I saw the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. She was sitting there, doodling in her notebook. There were only 5 students in the classroom, all of them boys, but she was sitting alone, so I sat next to her. She glanced at me and said, "Well, I see someone has finally decided to take that seat." I began to wonder if I smelled strange. She laughed and said, "I looked at the other boys, they're all nerds, probably very shy. Even though I took advanced math, I'm not a nerd, 173 centimeters tall, 150 pounds, brown eyes and hair, not bad looking, women seem to like me, if not bewitched. I used to be told I had a lot of character. I don't think you smell funny, although I have to stand close to really tell. They were all shy nerd types, and you're not a nerd." "No, I can see that. I'm Lee Moore." She held out her hand and we shook. "I'm Lee Martin. You didn't even have to change the initials on your suitcase and handkerchief when you got married." She smiled at me, and then the coach came in after class. Lee and I walked together towards the student union building. She had green eyes, blonde hair, was 173 centimeters tall, of medium build, with full breasts and a beautiful girl next door face. I was completely captivated when she smiled at me. I told her I bet you were surprised when no boys in the class sat next to you because every guy wants to sit next to you. Thanks. I was really surprised. You took advantage of my insecurity. Now I can't stop you. I have a class at 2000 hours, but I'd like to invite you to dinner, maybe tonight, because we're in the same class and we should get to know each other. No, dinner's not a good idea, sorry, I have a steady boyfriend and he wouldn't like it. I have to try. Okay, see you later. I hope so too. I like you. At least we'll see each other in class. We meet twice a week in class. It's a difficult class and I have to study hard. One day I asked her a question and she explained it to me. After class, I asked her if she was having trouble with the class. No, I'm good at math, how about you? I need to take this class for my chemistry major, but I'm spending a lot of time on it. Maybe you can give me some pointers. Is this a little too much? I told you I already have a boyfriend. No, I respect your decision. I just need help. We can sit in the snack bar and review the homework like you're tutoring me, okay? Meet me at the snack bar at 4. I got to know Lee better through the snack bar hangouts. She and I got along well, and we talked about a lot of other things besides math. One day, a tall man walked in and went to the table where we had spread out our books. Lee looked up at him and gave him a charming smile. Marty, this is my boyfriend Rashad. Rashad, this is Marty, my math classmate. We stood up and shook hands. Loshad was a medium-skinned black man, 1.88 meters tall and weighing 100 kilograms. He sat down next to Lee. We closed our maths books and Loshad wanted to know why I was in the class with Lee and all the nerds. I needed an advanced maths course to study chemistry, and it also helped me with programming. Then the three of us started discussing why certain courses that seemed unrelated to our majors were mandatory, and it was an interesting chat. Rashad was smart, and I asked him about his major. I was studying physics, and I loved playing hockey, but I wanted to teach in high school. Unless I could make some money playing hockey, maybe become a gym teacher, that was a solid plan. I wasn't sure about my direction yet, and both chemistry and programming would get you a job, I just hadn't figured out which path to take yet. Which path? I planned to go into business. I majored in business. I like the feeling of making money. As the semester progresses, I spend more time with Lee. I live in an apartment off campus. One day I invite her and Rashad over for dinner. I also invite Stephanie, a neighbor who is a senior and very attractive. I had a casual relationship with her. Dinner goes well. I make fish stew, a spinach salad, and for dessert we have cookies and ice cream. The ladies drink wine, and Shed had a beer. Lee and Rashad left around midnight after a game of bridge. Surprisingly, we all enjoyed the game, even though we had never played together before. Rashad and Stephanie teamed up, while Lee and I formed another team. Lee used some unique bidding strategies that I learned and we ended up winning. Stephanie stayed the night. There was physical contact between us, but we both knew we were just fuck buddies. She had a boyfriend back home, and we never discussed him. That night was important because Lee invited me to the bridge tournament at the army base, and I accepted. Meanwhile, Stephanie had Rashad's number, she must have gotten it at dinner, but it wasn't obvious at the time. About 2 days later, I saw them walking together across campus towards our building. I followed them quietly. They went inside, and I followed them into the building. They got into the elevator, which stopped on the 4th floor, where she lived. What should I do now? The bridge tournament was on Friday, only 2 days away. I went back to my place, leaned against the window to read and relax. About 2 hours later, Rashad left through the front door. I hurried to Stephanie's door and knocked. She was wearing a pair of flip-flops and a loose-fitting dress and seemed a little flushed. Stephanie, do you need some company? Not now, Marty. Oh, shit, Marty. You saw the way you showed up here. Yeah. Did you have fun? Time. It seems that Shad is a little sneaky. I should feel bad about this, but I don't. I feel good. Sorry, don't worry, I'm working on a way to handle this situation. I hope you're not going to mess up the relationship between Lee and Shad. He's just a distraction for me, just like you. Well, not even as much as you. If you were Lee, would you want to know about Shad's mistake? Yes, me too. The bridge tournament was very interesting. Army is a very skilled player, but Lee and I came in third, which wasn't bad. She mentioned something about points, and when we were walking back to my car, she asked why you didn't tell me about Shad and Steven. I'm not sure how you found out. Steven told Rashad you knew, and he brought it up. I'm sorry, my curiosity got the better of me. What did you talk about? We decided to take a few weeks off and see how we feel. Oh, I see, Marty. I want you to take me to your house, if you would. Oh, sure. I drove back, probably not as carefully as usual, distracted by Lee, who took a step back, grabbed me and pulled me into the bedroom. Oh, God, Marty, oh, my God, I believed her. I always thought we would be perfect for each other. 20 minutes later, we were lying there, gently touching each other. I got up to brush my teeth, and Lee came in while I was doing it. I gave her an aloe toothbrush and we got morning breath, which we got rid of over breakfast. Rashad asked me if I was as good as Stephanie and if I was as good as Shad. We looked at each other, and then she grinned and said, "You're bigger, but better. Stephanie was nice, but you're better." From then on, we were inseparable. Rashad basically moved in with me. Loshad wasn't happy about it, but he didn't have much to say. It wasn't long before he found another girlfriend. He still visited Stephanie from time to time, and in his senior year Big L moved into the building where he lived, also on the 4th floor. I occasionally saw him with Stephanie. They didn't live together, but they hung out a lot. We said hello to each other, until one day Stephanie invited us up for dessert. L was also there, and it was a pleasant evening. I found L to be polite and intelligent, and a little too attentive to Lee. Steven probably felt the same way, because we were never invited back. Lee and I got married when we were 20, right after graduation. I got a job as a programmer at the Pentagon government agency J. Lee got a job at a public relations firm, where she focused on handling advertising for companies that wanted to influence government officials such as senators, congressmen and agency personnel. I inherited a house from my grandfather near the workplace. It was rented at the time, and we moved in after the lease expired. The house had 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a renovated garage and a finished basement that needed some renovation work was needed, so I enlisted the help of a friend from high school who ran a construction company in Virginia. Lee got pregnant, and we welcomed our daughter. They weren't identical twins, but they did keep us busy. Lee took a year off, and I reduced my workload so that I could provide the twins with the care they needed. After a year, I switched to contracting, which allowed me to work from home, while Lee gradually returned to working part-time. By the time our daughter was 4, she was back working full-time. By then, I had a regular routine, I was getting along well with my daughter, and the contracting work was going well, even though I didn't get benefits. Lee's work requirements were getting more and more demanding, mainly because she was strict with herself and ambitious. My work became more creative, with some projects for the government and others for private individuals. I came up with some new system ideas that I thought could be profitable, but I didn't implement them right away. Lee was earning a good income and the girls were growing up, starting junior high school at the age of 13. At 35, I kept fit by running and playing table tennis. Believe me, it's harder than it sounds, because the opponents are very good. Until I saw Lee and Big L in the video, I would have said that our sex life was satisfying. But after 15 years together, Lee might feel differently. I looked up where Big L lived, and it was only 3 miles from my house. I wondered if the Miami thing was a one-time thing or ongoing. I had some other questions in mind as well. The next day, I asked my daughters to take a DNA test with me. It was Friday, and despite what I told them about the YouTube video, they had to go to school for a quiz and were forbidden to practice. Lee called me at 10 o'clock, and I let the call go to voicemail. "Maddie, pick up the phone. I love you. I made a mistake. I'll be back this afternoon. Fuck." Sobs. One of the improvements I made to the house was an electronic door entry system. I changed the code and modified the garage. Decorated it with Lee's belongings. My mother and Lee's mother both called, curious about my next move. I honestly wasn't sure, so I told them I'd checked Lee's Gmail account and gone through her emails from the past month, including those in the trash, and there was no contact with Big Lee, just work emails and some slightly suggestive emails from a colleague who'd also gone to Miami. Lee's flight arrived at noon. I ignored all her calls and instead asked a friend to go to the airport and keep an eye out. He saw Lee and her SE employee board the plane, she looked around, then went to baggage claim. Before going to collect her luggage. A few minutes later, Big Lee got off the plane, spotted her and went with her to baggage claim, but she seemed to reject his advances. They eventually shared a taxi, which my friend filmed the whole time after getting the video. I saw Lee come home alone and unable to get in with the password she had changed. I confronted her at the door, and she apologized in tears, claiming she didn't know how it all happened. "You don't live here anymore, Lee. Your things are in the garage until you find a new place. Maybe you should go to his house." I told her there was nothing between him and me. "I love you." She pleaded, "You've publicly humiliated me and mocked our marriage. The kids are at school. Who knows what they've been through? You're despicable. Get out of my sight." She left, crying, and sat on the chair outside. Our neighbor, Mrs. Cunningham, went over to comfort her. I called Lee's mother and told her that Lee was nearby and might need help. Ellen, her mother, wasn't exactly sympathetic, but agreed to come over in an hour. I sat in the kitchen drinking coffee and trying to figure out what to do next. My thoughts were still a mess from the previous night. I contacted a lawyer I knew and he referred me to Joan Ellis, a family law attorney. I made an appointment to meet with her on Monday. Surprisingly, Ms. Ellis called me back within half an hour. "Mr. Martin, this is Joan Ellis. You made an appointment for Monday. Regarding your wife and the basketball player," she asked. "Yes, that's right. How did you know her name wasn't mentioned in the video?" I replied that a TV reporter had guessed it. Big L is a big deal here, especially in the gossip circles. I don't think we should wait until Monday. Can you come at 10 a.m. tomorrow? That's fine, she suggested. I agreed. Great. Please briefly describe your relationship with your wife and Mr. Johnson, and if possible, collect any financial documents. She instructed us to end the call and advised me to avoid impulsive behavior. As I hung up, the phone rang again. It was Big L, Marty. I called to apologize, and he said, "Fuck you, I'm going to make your life a living hell." "Asshole," I retorted, "it's not all my fault, she's partly to blame too, it just happened." He argued that before Miami, she and I were happily married and we had 2 children. "Bastard, if you see me coming, just run," I said calmly but firmly. He was silent for a long time before hanging up, but I now had his number. I checked our joint mobile phone bill and found Lee's number, but by then she had already arrived in Miami, and there were 2 calls. I couldn't see today's call history, but I don't think they met in Miami by plan. I checked the Wii calendar and found that they had a game in Miami on Wednesday, and Big L was the commentator, so he was there for work. The doorbell rang. It was my parents and in-laws, but Lee wasn't there. I offered them drinks, but they declined. We sat down, and I stood at the living room door and asked my mom, "Do you have any ideas?" My mom said, "Let's go outside and talk, see what you're thinking." I thought about it, and I started to adjust my voice, exchanged a glance with my mom, and she seemed to understand my pain. Later she mentioned that my expression was so devastated that she didn't understand how things could be fixed. My father asked, "Would you like to talk to Lee?" She asked, why couldn't she say anything when we were at her house? Not only had she ruined our family, but it had gone on for 3 nights. She didn't even bother to hide it from her employees at Keo. Now the whole world knows. I answered bitterly. Ellen interjected, "I know she messed up Marty, but you have a daughter and you've loved each other for years. You've loved each other for years, and if it's possible, you still have a lot to salvage. She's no longer my wife, and I'll never see her that way again. She's just the mother of my children, and that's all," I said firmly. "Listen, you're hurting right now, and your pride has been hurt, but your marriage isn't over just because of a few days," Ellen pleaded. "Ellen, I respect and love you both, but your daughter has done something unforgivable. Please don't try to fix this. It's over," I concluded. She raised her hand. "You should all start thinking about life after divorce or a formal separation," I continued. Mom said with tears in her eyes, "Just give us a few more days, Maddie, just give us a little more time. Your father and I can take the girls for the weekend. We'll go to the lake." I agreed. At that point, the girls arrived home on the bus. They rushed to the door, but found that the code had changed, so they had to knock. Their grandparents, which surprised them. They wanted to tell me about their day at school. Betsy has a friend called Sharon Davis, and she asked Betsy if she had seen the video. Betsy said she hadn't, but knew about it. Sharon wanted to know if her parents were going to separate. Betsy and Linda weren't sure. I told them we would find out later. They didn't seem too upset. Linda asked where her mum was. Ellen answered that she was next door. "Your grandparents want to be with your father, but I think you should pack your things and get ready to spend the weekend at our place, and we'll all go to the lake together." They were happy, but wanted to see Lee. We told them to go upstairs and pack. I didn't think they should go see her, but the others felt it was necessary. I suggested that Lee could meet them on the porch after they had packed. Ellen went to get Lee's bags, they loaded them into the car, and then waited with their grandparents on the porch. Lee came over with Ellen, and the girls didn't rush over, but waited until I opened the upstairs bedroom window so I could see and hear everything. Lee knelt in front of the girls, and the three of them hugged. Linda asked, "What have you done? How could you get close to that man?" The last sentence was uttered with sobs. "I made a very serious mistake, and I have to figure out why, but I still love you and your dad very much." Betsy was not satisfied with this, she was the stronger of the two. "If you love Dad, you wouldn't have done that, how could you film all of this?" She started to cry, and so did Lee. "I'm so sorry, so sorry." Lee hugged Linda, but Betsy pushed Lee away. Lee got up and ran towards Dad's car. My parents loaded the girls into their car and drove off in different directions. I sat on the bed, shocked and sad. Then I was very, very angry. I was so angry I could explode. I paced back and forth, screaming at Lee and Larry. I ran downstairs to the basement and started hitting the punching bag. I was determined that they would both have to bear the consequences, no matter what. Afterwards, I did my best to repair the damage to my hands, then had a nightcap and went to bed. It was a long time before I finally fell asleep. The next morning, I went for a long brisk walk, then collected my financial documents and headed to the lawyer's office. Joan Ellis was a 45-year-old brunette with dark eyes, dressed casually in jeans and a sweatshirt. We shook hands, and I said, "I'm sorry I'm not dressed nicely. It's Saturday, and I was doing some yard work." She apologized, saying, "That's okay. You look fine," I smile and assure her. We walk into the conference room and she offers to lead the way. I say, "Ms. Ellis, I want to understand the options when it comes to divorce. I can explain it to you, but are you sure you want a divorce? Divorce is a difficult journey." "Do you have children?" she asks. "Yes, twins, 13 years old. I want custody." I confirm. "Before we discuss that, let's review, is ending the marriage the only solution? Was the Miami incident a one-off or had it happened before?" She asks. "I don't think she was cheating. Until I'm sure," I answer. "If so, can you forgive her?" She asks. "No," I reply quickly, without elaborating. "Well, let's talk about finances," she suggests. "We consider our incomes, our contributions to child support and our assets." Joan is pleased that I tell her that the house was in my name before the marriage and that the children have always lived here. She also thinks my role as primary caregiver will help me in my quest for custody, but reminds me that nothing is guaranteed. My income is similar to Lee's, but it is not stable. Joan thinks neither of us will have to pay alimony, and the parent without custody will be responsible for child support. I want to know how soon we can start the divorce process. It may take a week to prepare and file the papers, but I think you should wait a while longer because people can change their minds and you may need to consult. Joan suggested, "Oh, can we skip that step? I really don't want to talk to her alone." I replied, "You have to talk to her, and we'll try to keep it short." She asked, "Why is your hand bandaged?" "I got very angry last night and took it out on the punching bag without gloves." I explained, "At least you didn't have a face-to-face confrontation with Mr. Johnson or your wife." She commented, "Speaking of which, can I sue him? He needs to face the consequences." I insisted that in this case, it was no longer possible to sue for adultery or emotional alienation. I also checked the laws of Florida and there was no option. She explained that he still had to pay. I said firmly, my voice flat, that I would see what I could do, but please no violence, she urged me. I cannot guarantee that he needs to face the consequences. If he gets away with it, I will not be able to bear it, I replied. Mr. Martin, I must inform you that if I had known you planned to commit an act of violence, I may have to report it. She warned Joan, "You never know, thank you for telling me," I assured her. I signed an agreement and paid the reservation fee. I asked her to prepare the documents as soon as possible. I was about noon when I walked in the door. My father Leland called. He asked, "How are you?" I replied, "Okay, I just got back from the lawyer." He asked, "Oh, so soon, what did they say?" He asked. I discussed with her what issues would be involved in a divorce. "Marty, don't rush into this. Take your time. This is a big decision, don't be hasty." My father advised, "Dad, the moment Lee cheated on you with that man, she was finished. And the fact that she cheated on you repeatedly makes it even worse. But once is enough." I retorted, "Your mother thinks she's hurt you so badly that there's no going back. Maybe she's right, but I still want you to take your time and at least give Lee a chance to explain." He argues with me that what could she say to change my mind. I question him for a while, then say okay, I can't think of anything. He concedes and it's settled. I conclude that we talked about how the girls feel. Linda is very sad, Betsy is furious and can hardly control her anger. Mum tries to comfort them and reassure them that they won't lose their parents, we'll always be there. We said goodbye. The landline rang, there was no caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. It was Lee. Marty, please pick up if you're there. I need to talk to you, Marty. I need tea. I screwed up. I know. You're the only person I can turn to for something like this, and now I've lost you. Please. I understand you must be so sorry. She hung up, sobbing, and tears ran down my face. This time I went back down to the basement, put on my gloves, and still felt the pain. I punched and kicked the sandbag until I could hardly stand. Then I went upstairs and took a shower. Some people would drink to forget in a situation like this, but I prefer to punch a sandbag or go for a run. I considered how I could get back at Larry, and one idea kept coming back to me. I found a tool, although I already owned two, a registered 045 and AW. One day, while jogging, I found a glimmer of light in tall grass, a Taurus 380. I took it home, cleaned it, and found that it was loaded and fully functional, but I noticed that the serial number had been ground off, which made it illegal. Despite this, I decided to keep it. I took it to the shooting range once, and it shot fairly accurately. I often think about using the Taurus against Larry, but considering that I have to look after the girls and can't risk going to prison, the guy still makes me angry. I put those thoughts aside. I don't think it's a good time to talk to Lee yet. I know we'll have to face each other eventually, but the thought of seeing her makes me feel sick. Alone in the house, a wave of despair overwhelms me. It feels like a weight is pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, a feeling of dread overcomes me and I jump up from the sofa. If someone saw me, they might think I was crazy. I knew I had to do something, so I went for a walk. I passed Larry's house without stopping, but I noticed the lack of security around it. It was a modern house, right next to the street, with a basketball hoop in the driveway and a large garage at the back. I walked past a few times and took a few photos with my phone. I passed Lee's parents' house, where their car was parked outside and Lee was staying in our garage. Lee stayed in our garage. I went on to a convenience store, bought a prepaid cell phone and a bottle of Diet Pepsi, and then went home. It was about 3 p.m. on a Saturday. After I got home, I made a sandwich, but after just a few bites I felt excruciating pain. I grabbed the .380 pistol and drove to the countryside, where a friend had some land and an outdoor shooting range. There was no one around, so I used the pistol to empty both magazines. It's not flashy, but it gets the job done, although it is a bit heavier than I'd like. On the way home, I bought 2 pairs of neoprene leggings from a pharmacy. I made one legging and strapped the 380 to my back, testing it out while running, and it worked perfectly. My phone had been switched off for a day, and when I switched it on, I found 11 voicemails, over 20 text messages from family, friends and colleagues, and a pile of emails. The texts from work, plus the pile of emails, all came from Lee, Ellen and my mom, who wanted to talk. The texts were all similar, and a few of them were from Lee's father, Milt. One was an apology for Lee's behavior and his failure as a father, and the others suggested we avoid women and talk alone. I called him back and we agreed to meet at the basketball court in Raymond Park in 30 minutes. I put on jeans and slipped the 380 into my pocket, just in case I ran into Larry, who lived about a half mile from the park. I walked around the park for 10 minutes, passing Larry's house. I arrived early at the park, as did Milt. The park was small and not crowded. We shook hands and sat down on a bench away from the basketball court. Milt spoke first. I wanted to make sure you were doing okay. Ellen and your mom seemed very worried. I'm not doing well, Milt. I feel more than. It took me a year to gradually get back to normal after my mom died. I can only get through each day as it comes, and that's all you can do. Easier said than done. Lee's almost broken down. She hasn't eaten since she left us and hardly says a word. We're thinking of getting her some help. And you seem so much better than her. Maybe she feels guilty and you don't, which is hard to hear. Milt, the twins need her, they need a mom. I just don't understand why she's so hung up on it. I mean, she did what she did, and she thought no one would find out? I can't believe it. Sooner or later, even without YouTube, someone she works with will find out. Some of them are my friends, and they'll tell. I don't think she was thinking clearly. She didn't think at all. Maybe she suddenly found herself in an unfamiliar situation, far from her family, with a famous man courting her. She probably just gave in to her feelings, which she normally ignores. That's my opinion. At least you're being sensible, Milt. But I think she's had a crush on Larry since school. She thinks she can have it all. What are you going to do? I may have to divorce her now. The thought of her fills me with anger and resentment. I hope it doesn't make me sick. Well, others have said to take your time making a decision, but I really don't see how you can go back to any kind of family life with her. It's a marriage doomed to failure, to be precise. I'll wait a while longer, but not too long. If what you say about her is true, you may need to prepare her a little. I'll do my best. As we said goodbye, I was walking back to my car, which was parked nearby on the street, when I saw Larry carrying a basketball. The playground at the intersection, I reached for my pistol. Milt saw him too, and he was driving towards Larry, honking his horn. Larry jumped up stupidly to pick up the ball without looking. It wasn't Milt who hit him, but a car coming from the other direction, probably driving a little fast and blocked by Milt's car. The other car was an SUV, and the driver hit him before he could brake. Larry was thrown into the air between the hood and windshield, and then dropped to the street. Milt continued driving. I rushed to Larry, who was still alive and conscious. I looked at him as the driver of the SUV hurried over and said he was lucky, and that we weren't far from the hospital, only 4 blocks away. Larry recognized me, and he tried to speak, but couldn't say anything. I watched him slowly fade away. The paramedics arrived about 2 minutes later and they tried to resuscitate him, but unfortunately they were unable to save Big L. I felt a strange mixture of emotions. The police showed up and I was a little nervous because although I have a permit to carry a gun, the 30,080 is not legal, but I gave an interview and gave my name and address without any repercussions. The driver of the SUV was an older man and he was very distraught. I assured him and the police that he could have done things differently. Larry had just been at the wrong place at the wrong time. About an hour later, I drove home, threw away the 380, and went to Miltz's house. I knew Lee was there, but I wanted to discuss the fatal car accident with Miltz. I parked outside the door and rang the doorbell. Ellen answered the door. She could tell I was agitated, and I was, but there was a sense of excitement, of relief at least. I knew I had probably avoided a murder charge, pure luck, but I had to talk to Miltz. I asked Ellen if Miltz was in. He's busy, she said, turning around and shouting, Milt, don't you want to see Lee? No, not now. Milt came downstairs, and I signaled him outside so we could talk. Milt, Big Lee is dead. Damn it, you killed him. I saw you with the .380, but to be honest, he didn't seem too shocked. If you ask me, I didn't kill him. After you honked your horn, he got hit by a car, dropped his basketball and ran down the street like a child. I watched him die and couldn't help but laugh. Ah, I see, an accident. God works in mysterious ways. I'll let Ellen or you tell Lee the news that her boyfriend has died. He wasn't her boyfriend, but we'll let her know. I guess that'll make the headlines for sure. How is she taking it? Not very well, and you seem unusually relaxed. When he died, I did feel cheated. But then I realized it was a relief. Marty, I want to save my daughter. I feel she's going down the wrong path. I know she messed up, but I love her and I want her to have a chance to start over. So I'm asking you, can you at least stay out of it, maybe help out later? It's a hard request, but I'm asking. Milt, I need time to think about it. If I talk to her too soon, I'll. Any help you can give me to keep her away from me. I'll think about it, I'll figure something out, thank you. Congratulations on getting off murder charges, we laughed about it, we went back to the house, I drove away, I slept all night, the girls called, we had a nice chat, then I fell asleep. Sunday made me feel down again, it was a good day, but I found myself just thinking about my marriage, despite what Milt said, I know Lee and I can never reconcile, it makes me sad, but it's the truth. I went for a run again, then took a shower and went to my parents' house for the Sunday barbecue, bringing some sausages. The twins seemed in a better mood after their video call with Lee, who seemed to have cheered them up. I found that strange. Mom mentioned that they hadn't talked about Big L's affair or Larry's death, only school matters. Lee told the girls she'd visit them when she felt better. I enjoyed swimming with my family and the girls. I told my parents that I had witnessed Big L's accident and death, and they were shocked. My father asked, "Do you know anything about it?" "No, it's just a coincidence. I was talking to Milt in the park, he drove off, and Larry ran after a ball into the street and got hit. Well, I can't say I'm sorry. May the Lord have mercy on his soul." We changed the subject on Monday when I received a call from Joan Ellis. She first asked how I felt about Larry's death. She didn't know I was there and my name wasn't mentioned. I told her what happened and she seemed surprised, maybe a little skeptical that I might feel the same way. Then she told me the paperwork would be ready by Wednesday and asked when I needed it served. I asked her to hold off a bit because Lee was in a fragile state, and I promised the children that they would go to school despite the death of Big L and his actions making headlines the previous week. I was alone, so I decided to do some work. I spent half the day on army tasks and a few hours after school extracurricular activities working on my own projects. I picked up the girls and we had dinner together, which they love, so I thought it would be great. It was a pleasant evening, but before going to bed, both of them asked if their mother would come back. I answered honestly that I didn't think things would be the same as before. I can't predict the future, but I don't think we'll go back to the way things were. Things will change, but I know that we will always love you both. On Tuesday, Mir called, and Alan joined the conversation. They suggested meeting, so I agreed to meet at Starbucks, and we each bought drinks. Mir mentioned that he had spoken to a psychologist who specializes in family counseling and he suggested that Lee and I go for counseling. Alan added that if we got a divorce for adultery, the court might require us to go for counseling. Okay, I said, but if we really have to delve into this, I'm not sure counseling would help her. I won't say anything good, we're not asking you to lie, just be gentle about it and listen to the therapist talk to Lee, otherwise she could get into big trouble. The accident with Lee seemed to have scared her. We didn't tell her you were there. The first consultation was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Monday. I arrived on time and didn't want to spend much time with Lee. The counselor, Dr. Sylvia Price, explained the scope of her practice, including dealing with marital infidelity cases. She asked me about the goals of the consultation. I want to move on with my life. My priority is being a good father. I don't think getting back together with Lee is possible. What about you, Lee? What are your goals? I want things to go back to the way they were, but I know that's not possible. Even if things have to change, I still want to marry Maddie. Dr. Price looked at us both. As far as I know, Lee went to Miami for a work meeting, where she met a college classmate and spent a few nights with him. Their relationship became public because the man is well known. Is that why we're here? Yes, Lee admitted, I didn't think our relationship in Miami would become public, I thought it would just be our secret because I was away from my family. Dr. Price questioned, if that was the case, why did you dance with Mr. Johnson, knowing he was a celebrity? I thought it would be fun because the dance was not in the hotel, and it turned out to be fun. Lee explained, but you must have known your colleagues would know about your relationship, and Marty would find out soon. Let's leave that alone for now. Dr. Price suggested, and Lee agreed. Marty, can you explain why you are certain that the marriage is over? I looked Lee straight in the eye, because she was the person I trusted and loved the most, and I felt utterly devastated to see her betray me so openly and easily. I had experienced the pain of losing loved ones before, like when my grandparents died in a car accident, but this was different. I couldn't let myself be hurt like that again. If Lee could do it, then anyone could. I couldn't give her or anyone else the power over me anymore. Lee cried bitterly as I spoke. I made it clear that I could never trust her again. How did you feel when you saw her like that? Dr. Price asked. Just sad, really angry, it's very cruel to both of us and the baby, even if it wasn't intentional, but it's still bad, and it happened 3 nights in a row with someone you used to know. I asked Lee directly. Lee sobbed and said, no, I don't know why I did it, don't get mad. Lee, Dr. Price interjected, is it true that you had feelings for Mr. Johnson when you were at school? Yes, he was charming and famous, and he had a crush on me, but I rejected him because I was with Marty. She admitted it. So why did you agree in Miami? I questioned. Before the trip, I had been feeling unsatisfied, and we were both so busy, Miami seemed like a chance to get away, but when I saw Larry, I knew I couldn't resist him. It happened so fast, I can't explain it. Lee admitted, we had a wonderful night before you left, or did you pretend? I questioned. No, it was real. I can still feel it on the plane. I'm a mess. Lee started crying again. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, but anger came rushing back. I had to leave, or I would explode. Dr. Price followed me, suggesting I go to the bathroom for a while she talked to Lee alone. After about 15 minutes, Lee came out, no longer crying. I'm sorry, Maddie, she said before leaving. Dr. Price turned to me and asked how I felt about Mr. Johnson's death. I was there when he died. I felt a great sense of relief. He's dead. I could have killed him myself, if he hadn't been shot first. I know it sounds confusing, but that's how I feel. I admit it may be the same now, maybe worse. That man ruined my life just to be intimate. I feel cheated and I can't kill him. Why did the affair between Lee and Larry ruin your life? Dr. Price questioned. I was once faithful to my family, but now everything has changed. Lee's betrayal shattered my trust. I don't think I can ever trust anyone again. I admit, but it was a short time. Have you ever wondered about the passionate encounter between Lee and Larry? Yes, I've seen the video. They were consumed by lust, I answered. Did this make you feel betrayed? It was the ultimate betrayal. Lee, no matter what happens, will always remember that affair. If we stay married, I will always wonder if she is thinking about him when we are together. I want to destroy her memory, that's the only thing I can do. I admit, this position is difficult to accept, because I love this woman deeply. Dr. Price observed that I love her deeply, so this makes me very painful, she breaks my heart. I concluded the conversation. Dr. Price suggested that I consider what living arrangements we could make if we decided to split up. Lee's story, my task is to outline what happened in Miami and why I made the choices I did. In addition, the possibility of reconciling with Marty before the trip to Miami I felt aimless, lacking the joy I once took in things, and work and home life had become dull and routine, a situation that had been going on for months. I felt a general malaise. I was looking forward to the trip to Miami. A colleague named Brady Bean has been interested in me since we joined the office, and despite my attempts to discourage him, he persists. He's not particularly attractive, but he's friendly and a bit of a flirt, and while his persistence is flattering, it's not exactly turning me on. When we learn that we'll both be in Miami, he starts suggesting that we could take the opportunity to get intimate without any consequences. I make it clear that I'm not interested, but I know he won't give up easily. However, when we arrived at the hotel, Larry was already there. He was certainly charming, and his enthusiasm immediately attracted me. I felt myself drawn to him. He made it clear that he wanted me, and I agreed to have dinner with him. I can't quite explain why I acted on impulse like that. I had shared an intensely passionate night of intimacy with Marty the night before, and when Larry appeared, I was still excited, as if I had temporarily escaped reality and had the chance to experience some excitement while away from home. I never considered the consequences of being unfaithful to Marty, at least not consciously. If I had met Larry in Virginia, I would have probably rejected his advances, but I convinced myself that spending a few days in a different place was somehow acceptable. Larry and I both knew that we would go straight to his room at dinner, and as soon as we closed the door we skipped dessert. Larry pulled me into a kiss, and we started racing, both of us getting naked. My mind was filled with nothing but his beautiful body and his big Johnson. I quickly peed around his big tool, and the next morning I missed breakfast with everyone and barely made it to the meeting. I felt like the intimacy of the previous night set me apart, and I was sure they had noticed. I received some suspicious looks, but no one said anything directly. I briefly considered whether someone had informed Marty, but I didn't think it was likely. They had no idea and were just guessing. The intimacy between Larry and I was like nothing I had ever experienced. I think it was partly because we were far from home and free from the distractions of everyday life, but also because of his strong build and huge penis. Despite his many options, he chose me. My desire for him was overwhelming. After meeting, I contacted him and spent 2 hours in his room, then room service, and we became even closer. He introduced me to things that Marty and I had never considered, but Larry wanted, so it happened the next morning. I could still feel the weight of their sideways glances, a little worried, but I met Larry in his room at 5 o'clock, and we spent the next few hours in bed. The intimacy was still incredible, but not as intense as the previous nights. He suggested we get dressed and go dancing, and we did, ending up on YouTube. I recently watched the YouTube video of us dancing, and I know Marty watched it too, probably on the same night. I understood how he felt, his wife publicly and shamelessly pursuing another man in public. After dancing, we returned to the hotel and continued our intimacy. I had an early flight the next morning, and when I woke up, we were already intimate. We showered together, got dressed, had breakfast in his room, and then returned to my room to pack. My roommate Cindy told me there was a video of us dancing on YouTube, which she described as scandalous. I felt a wave of dread, and I knew I was in trouble. As we boarded the bus to the airport, I spotted Bart Kovac, Marty's close friend. I asked him if Marty had tried to contact me. I hadn't checked my phone during the trip, and Marty had left me a voice message every night. Bart told me that Marty had seen the YouTube video of us dancing and knew that I was with Larry every night. I felt numb. The flight home was awful. No one spoke to me. I sat by the window next to a stranger. I knew Larry was on the plane too, but I didn't see him when we landed. I still hadn't seen Larry. I collected my luggage and he came up to me, concerned about how I was doing. I told him I suspected I was getting better again, which seemed to upset him. I hadn't expected Marty to pick me up, so I waited in the taxi queue. When I finally got a taxi, Larry and I got in the same one, as we were going nearby. Larry apologized for the YouTube incident and admitted that he hadn't thought things through. I told him I wasn't in the mood to talk. When we got home, I told the taxi to drop Larry off first. I let myself in. Marty opened the door, and his expression of devastation and anger made me run for the hills. Since then, I've been living with my parents. I feel numb. I tried to talk to my daughters, but Betsy pushed me away, and I can't blame her. We managed to connect via video call and things got a little better. I spent an hour getting ready. Now, after the first consultation, I'm receiving psychological counseling. I'm beginning to believe that my marriage is over. Marty's experience of losing control of his emotions hit me hard. I don't know how to move on from his anger and sadness, or how to regain his trust. I don't feel I deserve his trust. Then there was Larry, who died in a car accident. I felt so sad when my mother told me the news. He asked me to call him from a taxi, and to be honest, I probably did, but now that he's gone, his death leaves me feeling another kind of emptiness. If I'd been intimate with another man, I know I'd probably be haunted by memories of being with Larry, but now that he's gone, maybe not. It's a strange feeling, and I can't get rid of it. If I'd rejected him, he might still be alive. It doesn't make sense, but there it is. I feel like such a mess. Maddie, things at home are starting to settle down. The twins are struggling to adjust to school life, and although it's been a difficult process, Betsy is still sad, and Linda misses her mother a lot. I think Betsy does too, and they video call every night. Lee seems to be doing better, but it's hard to tell during the short calls. Our second session was very similar to the first, except that each of us had a separate session before the joint session. Dr. Price asked, "Have you considered anything that might have led to your reconciliation?" "I can't think of any reason, I'm sorry." You think it sounds unrealistic to say that if you understand why Lee was unfaithful to Larry, if you know the reason behind it, and know how to prevent it from happening again, you can work on trusting her again. I'm sorry, but I think she just wanted to get close to him and thought she could get away with it. Didn't she admit that? I believe she is attracted to Larry, but I think she wants to get caught. Why is this an important question? Maybe you should ask her, doctor. This won't keep us together. Betrayals like this are hard to forgive because she thought she could get away with it, so the betrayal is even harder. If she wants to get caught, that's even worse. It means she wants to leave the family, leave me, leave her life. She wants a dramatic ending. You know, if Larry were still alive, I believe she would be with him right now. Our joint sessions began and ended with apologies, but I don't believe that even if she really regretted her actions and could explain them, I could continue to be with her. Today I had the lawyer send the divorce papers. I received the divorce papers. I'm still writing in this diary, hoping that it will shed some light on our weekly counseling sessions in the future. I've noticed that Maddie is less angry and seems more composed, which shows me that our relationship is over. I have read books about the stages of grief, and it seems that Maddie has accepted our divorce and how my affair ended our marriage. The divorce papers were not a surprise, and now I have to consult a lawyer. Returning to work last week was not easy. I felt the cold shoulder from my colleagues, who all know about my infidelity and the chaos it has caused in our family life. Even Brady Bunch, who used to court me, has kept his distance. Too bad for him, he might have had a chance. Now that I know I'm 43, I bet he'll try again soon. My lawyer advises me to fight for joint custody of our daughter, because he probably will continue to live in the house, which belonged to him before we got married and where he was the primary caregiver for many years, so I'll probably live nearby and take care of our daughter in turns during the week or at the weekend. It's all very frustrating. I confessed my infidelity to my lawyer and asked him to speed up the divorce proceedings. I don't want any financial support from Marty, and it seems he doesn't want any from me either. Our savings will be divided equally. It's sad to see years of marriage go down the drain. All that's left are the memories. I realize I'm not sad for Larry. Yes, I'm responsible too, but he didn't have to get involved with me, he could have chosen anyone. Why me? I'll never understand. Dr. Price believes that my behavior, especially my public flirting and unwillingness to hide my affair, may indicate that I crave a more exciting life, but I disagree. Marty thinks I want to be caught and then set free, and now I am free, but I hate it. I've even lost interest in intimacy, and when I feel nervous, I go to bars instead with a vibrator. I've turned down Brady Bunch many times, and I don't even feel tempted. It's easy, but I don't know how long this emptiness will last. Marty, the divorce was officially finalized today. I have primary custody of the twins and they will continue to live in our old house. Lee can have them every other weekend, and they may stay for the summer and Thanksgiving or Christmas. Our agreement remains the same as it has for the past 6 months, and since Lee moved to an apartment 2 miles away, I told Milt and Ellen that they are always welcome to visit often and maybe see the girls on Lee's weekends. I haven't started dating yet, but I've had a few chance encounters, and some divorced women in our circle of friends have expressed interest. We go out for dinner or bowling, then back to my place for fun without the kids. The intimacy is usually great, but I've made it clear to all three that I'm not seeking anything serious or exclusive. They know my past and understand that some people may hope that I will change my mind, but I doubt it. The pain I feel when I see Lee with that man is still very deep, and I try not to dwell on it. The twins are adjusting. Linda doesn't have a problem with Lee, but Betsy holds a grudge like Apro. She's a lot like me, which probably isn't a good thing. I've only spoken to Ellen about it, not Lee. Lee and I don't say much to each other, and she knows I'd prefer to reduce our interactions. It hurts to see her, so I avoid it. Ellen is worried about Lee, who's become a bit of a recluse. I rarely see her, even though we live in the same social circles and are close by. I have no sympathy for her, and probably never will. I never understood why she did it, and I don't think she does either. I think it was a combination of factors: her general dissatisfaction, the chance to go to Miami, and meeting Larry there. Maybe any two of those factors would not have led to it, but all three combined to break up the marriage and a year later to find them lost at sea. Milmore was playing golf on Saturday, as was usual for him, but today an old school friend, Fred Cunningham, had taken their place. Fred, who worked as an electrical engineer, and they walked off the course in private. They had never talked about it before, not even on the phone. Milt asked, "Fred, how have you been?" "I guess I'm trying to make it." I followed his advice and followed him from behind his house. He always plays on Saturday afternoons, even after retirement, he still wants to play. I read about it in the newspaper. When he hit the street, I had to make a split-second decision, and although I didn't know what would happen, I did it anyway. If I hadn't done it, I probably wouldn't have had time to swerve. Your horn must have scared him, but you must have been scared too. I know I was definitely scared. It went really well, even better than expected. It was incredible, like someone intervened from heaven and saved Maddie. I was definitely scared. I saw him die. I was on the phone to Marty, that was Marty, and there he was. Why I think he needed to witness it, if it just ended like that, you know, but then he said he felt robbed, and I knew he would, that person was going to take action sooner or later, and he had the tools on him, and I just wanted my granddaughters to have a dad, to have a normal family, and I knew Lee, and if Marty got arrested, especially because of her, she might react badly, but did he really deserve to die? It's hard to say, but Maddie and the girls deserve a chance to live a decent life, and so does Lee. So does Lee. After that, the two old friends never mentioned the incident again. They just walked side by side on the ballroom floor.